Hello, everybody. Happy Christmas, and we're back for another one. So, this is the Dwarf Physician. For this one, we chose a theme and sort of a character prompt rather than a than a known character. And we wanted to develop the character as an assignment on the Discord, and kind of talking through the general idea and how we manifested it. So, the idea here for me was to go a kind of non-typical route with the whole physician idea and kind of think of ways that a dwarf might do medicine and healing. So first idea was that I'd read about how silver has sort of antibacterial or anti-infectious qualities, and so I like the idea of separating the character from inside to outside, giving it a sense of sort of within the cape and without the cape, and then the cape having some silvered quality to it. Another thing that I really wanted was the cape to kind of sit in a weird way to give her a unexpected, let's say, silhouette. Much simplified, so it's very triangular. I want her to feel quite stable, as she's this character of great learning and great knowledge, but with a personality who's less charitable a little bit. So I'm drawing this as I'm talking to the audience on the live stream, so it goes in a little bit back and forth between sort of actively drawing and trying to explain things and clarifying things. So a little bit here and a little bit there, but as we go along, you can see that the major shapes of the final piece are coming together. So at this point, I feel like I've established a lot of the main elements. Getting that hat in, I'm quite fond of this kind of, it's called a Thracian hat or Thracian taupe. And they have all kinds of historical significance. It's a fun little element to add in. One thing I did find in this one was that I really wanted the character to feel like it had sort of that kind of gnarled beauty of especially old women. So I went and found a bunch of good references, and I wanted to draw out the major shapes and kind of familiarize myself with the minute shapes that kind of make up these like beautiful older big craggy faces. So I spent quite a bit of time doing these studies, first drawing them as sort of linear studies and trying to just recognize the volumes and get to a point where I could kind of feel out these shapes and also how these faces structurally are quite different from what you usually learn in anatomy class. See how these pockets of fattier skin and flesh are kind of sagging down, and there's a lot of stuff to be learned there, and a lot of stuff to be used in a character like this. So I think this went for a stream or two doing these studies. I especially love this piece of reference. There's something incredibly badass about this lady. I think it might have to do with the gun, but these were a lot of fun to do, and a good way of adding some surety to your own mark making, and sort of getting a feeling that you're not just adding things from intuition, but also sort of putting things in that you actively derived from studies. So this is my favorite way of studying, is to go through and kind of derive the knowledge I want from good pieces of reference, and then put those away and sort of use the information that I've learned from doing the study, rather than stuff that you can, because you can continually observe stuff from a piece of reference and kind of go blind to it and kind of just wildly add everything in. But if you take the time to kind of study it out, you can take the stuff that's appropriate for the piece and discard what isn't. Later we'll go through and do color versions of that, but now, immediately after doing those studies, I want to take the knowledge I can recall and like the little sort of ideas and rules that I've taken out, and I want to apply them to, especially to the face, quite immediately, just to make sure that this face that I have, that, you know, this is going to be quite cartoony and it's going to have, you know, this giant nose and everything, but I want it to feel authentic to that reference, to those qualities. Same with these cloth studies I'm going to do. I want to give the cape this sort of thick woven cloth feeling, and so taking a little bit of time and getting some visual nods on how heavier cloth folds and what those folds look like, how sharp they should be, and so on. It's quite worthwhile. It took away a lot of the stresses of drawing this cape, because I could refer back to things that I've already sort of taken out of the studies. That was very useful. Now this isn't a new thing I found, but it's a thing I think is worth repeating with every piece. That, you know, the more structured you can be in how you study and the things that you apply from your studies, I think the more time and effort you can save yourself. So it's one of those things that you just keep relearning and relearning. And now that I've gotten the face to sort of a place where I feel like it has the personality and the kind of mood that I want, it's a good time to go and finish the rest of the line art. So meticulously going through and establishing each shape as they correspond to that underlying construction layer. I'm trying to be somewhat loose here, and that comes back to kind of save me some time later. If I was doing a more detailed piece, like I might be doing for future pieces, I would probably go through and soften up and adjust the line art more. And I've been doing that a lot more in professional pieces. It is a bit of a meticulous and boring process sometimes, so this being more of a learning piece and something I do with the Discord crowd, I wanted to have more fun. I wanted to not sort of be sitting around on the stream and just like noodling details all the time. But you can see here in the study, for example, I color the line art, and I'm trying to just directly observe the colors here. I'm not using layer modes. I'm just trying to observe the volumes and trying to get the information that I want so that I can apply it to the piece. It's important that this doesn't have the same lighting situation as the illustration or the character, but they are similar shapes, and so you can use the same understanding if you just turn the form in your head. So that's very useful, and also the direct observation helps me kind of divine what the actual colors are rather than what they are corresponding to layer mode and so on. So I very much like doing these kinds of that's terrible language. I like to do these kinds of studies a lot. They calm me. They take away a lot of the stresses that I have about being painterly and painting. And I still have big trouble kind of getting through these studies as I'm doing them. But afterwards, it's very rewarding to come back and kind of look at them and feel like they're sort of completing the task that I set up to complete, and it takes away a lot of the pressure from sort of the final approach to the painting, because it feels like or I have already kind of solved the issues that I want to solve. One thing I slightly regret for the final piece, not regret, but thing that I would love to use for a future piece is sort of this jaw area on her. The kind of unexpected folds in her flesh there is one of those things that really lends something extra, something unexpected to a character. It's not a big thing, it's just like a thing that I learned from the study, and that I'm now looking for sort of opportunities in future pieces to include. That particular area in the character is covered up by the cape, and I did consider kind of making the cape looser, but then it would lose it would lose a lot of the elements that I was already kind of hoping to include. So I opted out from that, but I keep coming back to that particular point and kind of wanting to include. So we're moving on to local color now, flat colors. At this point I'm operating in Procreate 5. And so I have access to the color dynamics slider and the brushes, and that is a tool specific thing. I try to be very consistent in not being kind of overly dependent on tool specific approaches, but the color dynamics thing is nice. It just means that you get a lot more variation in the gamut of paint or color that you're trying to use. And for me at least, it adds a sense of playfulness and whimsy to the whole thing. I get to have a lot of fun with it, and it also doesn't kind of it doesn't feel overly fancy. It doesn't feel like something I couldn't do without it, but it is one of those things that that actually simulates, you know, the qualities of having a live palette, for example, because paint will mix on the palette and you can get these automatic color dynamics going in traditional media, so it actually feels closer to that slight level of chaos than like the clinically clean colors you get traditionally in digital. So as you can see, like I'm establishing large swaths of flat color, but I'm trying to break them up. I don't want like one big swath of this color and that. I want little harmonies. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Things that excite me. Little variations, little subtle pushes here and there. Kind of create some interest and some innate beauty, if you will. Just things that operate and work on their own part. So I'm establishing the shadows now. I want to avoid noodling too much. So I'm starting out with these very broad swaths, very broad strokes of shadow, and then working in the smaller shapes. I might be going too detailed too quick again, but at least it's an improvement from last time. And again, this is one of those tasks that is, I feel, best performed in sort of silence and without distractions. So me doing this while streaming might have been a poor tactical move, but then again, that is the quality of this too, is to do this with everybody and kind of showing the process and sharing the troubles. I also shouldn't be dependent on situation to be able to perform this stuff, so it's good practice. You can particularly tell in the face that the establishment of the large shapes to begin with helps a lot with adjusting the small stuff to kind of to fit and to create just the right kind of mood. If I'd started with just the small detail strips, for example, it's very easy to lose the sense of the larger whole. So it's important to kind of establish the big cheek spaces and the shadows around the eyes and the nose. Once you have those, then the eye and therefore your brain will kind of automatically start picking out a three-dimensional shape for you. And then you can start adjusting that and kind of use your visual intuition to push it this way and that. So again, at this point, I'm moving from large to small, so I'm approached into a pretty small detail now. At the same time, I'm explaining some basics of freehand drawing, so how you need to picture these boxes in perspective space and then draw from the qualities of that box. It is one of those truisms about drawing that is far easier to kind of think out than to actually perform, especially when drawing directly on paper. But it is necessary, and it does make life easier, and it demystifies the craft, as it were. So this is, we're approaching that part of Evan's painting videos where things go into a detail-oriented space. So I think I can take that time to talk a little bit about the future of these assignments and this whole thing, this whole Patreon thing. So we are doing this coming year a set of assignments on 2-week deadlines. So in the Discord we have running in conjunction with the Patreon, we will be doing feedbacks on the streams. We will be following up on people's progress. Everyone is invited to join. And we will be choosing themes appropriate to the TEGN universe, though you can kind of develop it respective to whatever universe you want. And as kind of a mini mentorship sort of deal, we'll be doing feedback and suggesting approaches, and also kind of doing our own so you can follow along. And so far we've done a couple, and I think it's pretty good. It's a good project so far. We've had a lot of people do a lot of very cool pieces, so I'm truly impressed with everybody on the Discord, and really looking forward to doing more. So yeah, if that's something that people would like to join in on, then the Discord stands ready, as well as the live streams. There's my little pitch. So you can see here that there's a lot of going back and forth and kind of adjusting and pushing and pulling. And I'm not entirely sure that all of it is necessary. As with all of the other pieces that we've been uploading, this isn't a perfect example of anything really, but it is a good example of sort of taking a general approach and then adjusting it for a particular result. So what we did here was to place down the primary shadow sources, and then I've lightened them up a little bit because I wanted more of a value range dynamic. So I then made a selection from this shadow layer and applied a soft light layer over top, and now I'm using a dark tone in the soft light to call out the areas that I want to give more shade, so as to achieve a sort of dynamic spatial lighting situation. And you'll see in the end like how that works out. I think it works out pretty well. It's a worthwhile approach to things. But it definitely is a bit time consuming, and this is being used for a particular reason. I tend to be a fan of simpler approaches. So while it was it was a very fun experiment, and it did yield a result that I was looking for. I think sometimes a harsher light and sort of more focus on designing shadow shapes can be advantageous. But now I'm just ruminating. Anyway, up there a second ago you could have seen me did another perspective understanding thing. So someone had a problem with drawing a head from sort of this underlying angle, or from beneath. And the approach I wanted to show them for sort of breaking down the head and approaching these shapes that are a little weird when, like, the facial shapes are so recognizable in the angles that we're used to them, that when we try to draw it from an unexpected shape or angle, the shapes become almost unrecognizable, and it's very strange to sort of draw it the first couple of times. And so we tend to, as artists, to use the recognizable shape and twist it to the best of our ability. As I was trying to show how you can kind of learn how to recognize those shapes from these weird angles using the same perspective tricks as I did with the whole figure earlier. So we're back to working in the shadows again. I'm still working on that soft light layer, using more specific selections and giving a little bit of cast shadows to individual objects hitting against the main form. So you can start seeing the quality of this approach now, where it's kind of marrying together the qualities of drawing and the qualities of painting, which I quite enjoy. It looks nice, and it's a nice way of distinguishing individual objects in a concept piece, for example. So in that respect, it is a very useful technique. I think in hindsight, a thing that plays really well is to keep an eye on spaces of intended detail and where you can kind of do away with it, so you can balance it out and try and guide the viewer's eye a little more actively. I tend to shy away from doing that, basically because I like to leave the audience unaware of any intent on my part to sort of guide them. That tends to feel very handheldy very quickly. And I think the strength of a character lies as much in its intuitive approach as it does in deep and meticulously designed concept. So if a character isn't appealing by its own qualities, then all kinds of lighting tricks and concept arty techniques ain't gonna make it a good character. It might make it more flashy, but not necessarily better. And so I try not to indulge too much in that, but I should probably get better in mastering those techniques anyway, because they are good to have, and sometimes they are part of the design process too. Anyway, as you can see, my my personal Stalingrad is continuing this face. Little by little, I'm kind of molding it into the shape that I want. And it definitely is an example of one of those things where you go blind over time, just working and reworking a thing, and you kind of go blind to what you're actually trying to achieve. You have a feeling, a loose idea of an emotional intent, but it's hard to know exactly how it's supposed to end up. However, it's slowly but surely coming there, and by the time we finish, I feel very good about that face. You can see how I've now pushed towards a sort of painterly read in the beginning of the process, and then as we're approaching the end, I'm actually drawing back towards something more drawn, something that corresponds less to the direct use of light and surface, and more with sort of this sketched out qualities of an outline, which is sort of semi-intentional. It is definitely something I'm working on to try and find a stronger visual approach. But so little by little, I think it's becoming more and more cohesive. If you go back a couple of months and look at pieces I did then compared to this, this feels more solid. It feels like something that's following an internal intent more. So I'm pleased with how it's coming along, and it also is working quite well as a modus for showing an audience sort of my approach as well, and a good vehicle for sort of talking about concepting. And it is corresponding to the approach that I use professionally. So I feel like it's a good middle ground. Now at this point, we're so far into the detail noodling that it's hard to kind of spot where the work is being done. We actually had that problem in the stream as well, where people were asking me to turn on a cursor effect in Procreate, and the problem was I did, and it still didn't help because the brushes were just too small. So I think this is kind of my process telling me that I should probably work larger, and like at this point I don't know if the detail rendering is actually worth it. Though again, towards the end, it is fun to have stuff to sort of run through with your eyes and sort of look at and enjoy visually. So all in all, maybe I just need to be better at focusing on the visual stuff to render out and then hide the rest. I don't know. But this was a very fun piece. We had a lot of good fun with coming up with variations on the concept. There was a lot of clever ideas from the people taking the assignment. So I think that's the major benefit of these pieces too, or these projects, is that I get to hear from others. I get to partake in the conceptual process with others, and we get to sort of exchange these things and talk about, not just how we're going to manifest our pieces, but why and for what conceptual background reason. All of that really helps to sort of hammer out what we think is important for the craft and for things in concept art. So yeah, I think that might be my favorite benefit. So in all, this was the Dwarf Physician. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll join in for the next one. This is Evan, and yeah, I'll see you as time goes by. Bye.